Hello, I'm Harry Watt of North Carolina State University Wood Products Extension. This is the National Firewood Workshop, the 2021 version that we have focused on Tennessee. Today we have Chris Huff, who is with Forestry Mutual Insurance here in North Carolina. He's an insurance agent and very knowledgeable and works only with the forest and wood products industry. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us, let's just run through the different kinds of insurances that a firewood business would be considering to have.
Well, the first one that we always talk with everybody about from day one is going to be general liability. And basically the general liability policy, or some people refer to it as GL, same difference, is basically covering the third party or any kind of person that would come up on the site that you may be doing business on. If you've got a firewood location that you have, that you're producing firewood, you want to make sure that that's listed on your general liability policy. And what that covers is if a third person customer or somebody of that nature comes up on your site and is somehow injured, your general liability would cover that. There are some other instances where GL could pick up from a standpoint of, by having a firewood operation, you're selling that product. So there is something that comes along with that called product liability and things of that nature. Now, firewood is not technically a finished product as far as you building anything with it, so that eliminates some of that liability. But that is another step that you want to make sure is in that coverage.
Well, very good. Well, tell us about another type of insurance we need to be thinking about.
The next thing you would be thinking about from a standpoint is property coverage, which would be your fire and theft. And that property coverage could be for the building itself. If you've got a building shelter, on the property that you're working on, it would cover that building if it's, destroyed from fire or theft or anything of that nature. That could also cover your contents. If you've got firewood equipment installed in that building, that would be considered contents, and again, covered under that property policy. Beyond that, when we start talking about what we refer to as rolling stock, i.e. Forklift, front end loader, knuckle boom loader, if you happen to be using that, that would fall under what we call inland marine coverage. And that is also fire and theft for that equipment, and you would insure it for whatever value you deem necessary. And that would also go for the property coverage. That would be the premium for that would be based on the values that you set out for the property.
What about like my work in process inventory, my finished goods inventory, logs on the yard? Is that covered?
That would also fall under that property policy. You can insure your stock, your finished product, anything of that nature. You can actually have that listed out, and it does not have to be in a building. You may have a pile of logs or pile of bark or something that you want to include as coverage. You can do that. You would just need to list it out separately.
Right, and I'm sure your rate depends on how much you want covered. The more you cover, the more the rate, right?
That's correct. It's all based on the value that you put out there.
Well, that's fair, right? We want the coverage.
It is. It is.
What else we got? We got employees need to be insured too.
Yeah, definitely. The next thing we would be looking at is workers' comp, and that's something that I want to upfront say that workers' comp is very state specific. So depending on what state you're in, you want to look at how the policies are written there. Most states that I know of, especially from a firewood standpoint, deal with it on payroll. There may be some out that base it on production. But what you're doing with workers' comp is, for instance, in the state of North Carolina, it says if you have 3 or more employees, state says you have to have comp. However, what it doesn't specify there, that even if you only have 1 or 2, you're not required by law to have workers' comp, but you're still liable for that employee. So if you don't have that coverage, then you've got to pull that money, or you're still required for making sure that he's taken care of. So nowadays, with contracts like they are with different businesses and stuff that you may be doing business with, a lot of times, even if you've got 1 employee, those companies you're dealing with on a contract basis are requiring workers' comp regardless of number of employees.
Right. I hear business owners say that in order to get a certain customer to buy, they had to supply an insurance certificate.
Correct. And usually they want to see everything, workers' comp, at least the workers' comp and the general liability. And the thing about the workers' comp too, on top of state specific, how they figure things, all your states have specific rates. So in other words, each state sets their rates for what that workers' comp class code is going to be. So for instance, Virginia's rate may be slightly less than than North Carolina, or vice versa. But each state sets those individually, and they change on an annual basis.
Okay. What about some businesses? If it's more than an owner, or even with an owner, they'll take out a life insurance policy in order to have some cash to help buy out the other partner or settle the business.
Yeah, there is possibility of doing something, a life insurance policy on the owners, and it can be written in a manner that if something happens to one owner, that the beneficiary is the other partner that can take that income, or take the money from that policy and pay off, debt, or basically to make sure that company stays intact.
Now, can the company pay the premium for that?
They can.
Okay. Well, that seems to me, if you're in a partnership with more than one person, that you definitely want to plan for succession, because things happen to all of us. You just never know.
Right.
What else do we have to be concerned with on insurance?
One other thing would be probably the last, well, there's two more, but one would be your transportation side. That would be either a business auto or commercial auto, depending on the state you're in and how they refer to it. But what you're looking for there is obviously coverage for the vehicles that you have, whether it be just service units, which would be pickups, maybe cars. You may have tractor trailers. Obviously, you've got to have, and they're all rated differently, but you've got two portions to your commercial auto. You have your liability side, which typically nowadays in every state that we do business in, we automatically only quote $1 million policy or more. If you've got commercial autos, big trucks. And then, so we look at $1 million policy for the auto liability side. That covers the other person. And then you have your physical damage, which is your comp and collision, which you also have on personal lines, car insurance, if you decide to cover damage to that vehicle.
Now, as an insurance agent in your early days, didn't you do audits of woodworking and forestry operations?
I did a lot of workers' comp audits when I was still in loss control field rep side of it. So yes, I used to go out and do a lot of the workers' comp audits on a regular basis.
And what do Firewood people need to be focused on if they want to avoid accidents and worker comp claims?
The biggest thing is some of the most important things. One, when you're dealing with any type of wood products, you're dealing with, whether it be a sawmill, firewood operation, you're dealing with equipment that's mechanized, or that is you've got to work on it. It's either electrical, it may be generator powered or whatever. But the one thing that you want to make sure of is that any kind of open guarding issues, whether it be belts and pulleys, chains and sprockets, make sure that all those pinch points and things are guarded. One of the biggest things that we run into with our mills, firewood, manufacturing accounts is lockout, tag out. When you're working on equipment, make sure that it's disconnected and locked out so somebody can't come up and turn the power on. Our largest claims from a workers' comp standpoint come from lockout, tag out, by far.
We appreciate hearing that. I understand your worker comp rates go down if your employees are like for example, in forestry. If I'm felling trees with a chainsaw, my workers comp's higher than if I'm in a cab felling machine.
Yes. In all the states now, and this has just happened in the last 10 years, because when I started, it didn't exist. But there is a non-mechanized rate and a mechanized rate in all states that we do business in. And I would assume that that's that way across the country.
Yeah, I would think so too. And our firewood processors often is the biggest working machine that's somebody around. And we come in two flavors, one where the operator stands on the ground and runs the controls, the other one there in the cab. So you're telling me that as a firewood producer, I need to ask my insurance agent if I've got a cab machine, can I get a lower rate?
That's a good thought. And there may not specifically be a separate rate for that, like there is on logging. There may not be a mechanized, non-mechanized. However, and again, it depends on the state. There may be discounts and things of that nature that your workers' comp carrier can add in. Yes, look, I've got nobody on the ground. You know, can we reduce this rate with discounts and things of that nature? Because I don't have that liability of that guy standing there, you know, with the potential to put his arm in something.
Okay.
So yes, that's definitely something you'd want to talk with your agent about.
Okay. Anything else you want to enlighten us on regarding insurance?
The last thing would be that, and we hadn't discussed this previously, would be an umbrella policy. And that would sit over top of your general liability, your auto, and also the employer liability on the workers' comp. That's not a big deal, but we are to the point now, especially if you have big trucks on the road, tractor trailers, that we're really recommending at least $1 million umbrella policy. And what that does is essentially you'd have $1 million GL, $1 million auto. If you have an accident on the auto liability side and it goes above that $1 million, it would pull from the umbrella an additional $1 million. Our biggest liability for all of our companies right now is that vehicle going down the road by far.
Okay. Well, you've really helped us out here, and all of us, the National Firewood Workshop 2021, appreciate you, Chris.
Thank you.
Right.